When we take a look at the richest people in the world, we will find most of them fall in one of two categories: either tech billionaire like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates, or stock investment giants like Warren Buffett. But if we ask throughout history who was the richest businessman in the world, one name would reign supreme over all, and that name is John D. Rockefeller. Welcome to Mystery Tales, and today we'll tell the life story of John D. Rockefeller. How did he become the richest man in the world? Even though the American government dismantled his empire to more than 30 companies, he still controls a large empire of oil trade worldwide. The story began in 1839. John Rockefeller was born to a father who was a traveling merchant. John always felt that he did not live in a stable home, especially when his father had an unpleasant surprise that he has another family, and they will all live together at the same crowded house. This state of instability made John seek any chance of independence. In fact, he started working from a young age. He worked simple jobs to help with the household's expenses. For example, he was raising turkeys and selling them to markets in his town. After a while, people started realizing that John is smarter than kids his age, especially when they moved to Cleveland, Ohio in 1854.
In a program which covers the entire nation, Ohio takes an important place.
After only 1 year, John shocked his family after he left school to work as a bookkeeper. His salary was just 50 cents per day. In the year 1857, John felt he was working a dead end, especially when the owners refused to increase his salary, even though he was doing the same job for years. So he quit his job and headed straight to a bank, asking for $4,000 as a loan, which was a very large amount at the time. But the bank manager knew John and knew he had a brilliant mind, so the bank manager approved the loan. Immediately, John started his own business as a produce brokerage, of which he had the lowest commission percentage in the whole market. And in his first year, John had an amazing sales numbers estimated at over $500,000, a very large number at the time. The bank saw how skilled John was as a salesman, so they basically started begging him to borrow more money in order to grow his business. Keep in mind, John was not even 18 years old yet at the time. Then, in the year 1859, something happened that changed John's life forever. In that year, a phenomenon called the Pennsylvania Oil Rush began.
In 1859, Edward Drake drilled this country's first producing oil well near Titusville, Pennsylvania.
The rush began by discovering a lot of oil in the city of Pennsylvania, just 100 miles or 160 kilometers from the city of Cleveland, where John lived. In less than a year, Pennsylvania produced 4,500 barrels of oil, which was a large number at the time, but oil in general didn't have many use cases. Keep in mind that cars wouldn't have been invented for about 50 years. Most of the extracted oil was used to produce kerosene, which was used in gas lamps. At first, John was not impulsive at investing all his money in petroleum in general. Instead, he waited and saw. What business can be made from petroleum? He discovered that the real money is not in extracting oil, but in refining it. He was surprised by the many derivatives from it. He also took into consideration that most people who put all their money in oil lost it all before finding a single oil well. So he decided that he wouldn't bother with searching for oil wells, and that he would wait for someone to find an oil well and would just buy it from him. Indeed, John was able to buy many oil wells. John started his oil empire by hiring a team of chemists and engineers, conducting experiments to increase the efficiency of refining petroleum and exploiting its derivatives in John's factories. This shows John's brilliance in seeking opportunities and taking advantage of situations. At that time, oil refineries were operating at a 60% efficiency. But John's team of chemists and engineers were able to make this number much higher. He was able to produce many petroleum derivatives and sell them separately, which made his refineries generate much more profits than all other refineries in America. In less than 2 years, John Rockefeller's refinery was valued at more than $70,000. This was a crazy number in 1865. And even though these profits were very impressive, John had his eyes on the other 26 petroleum refining plants in his region. So he started negotiating with their owners to acquire the remaining petroleum refining plants in his region. He had a very simple method to convince the owners. He would invite them over for dinner, and he would show them his impressive profits and tell them, "I want to buy your business, so you have one of two options. Either sell it to me for less than it's worth, and I will hire you with a very good salary, or I will sell my oil at a very low price, and you will all go bankrupt within months." And that evil but genius technique helped John acquire 22 out of the 26 refineries within 5 years, which vastly increased his wealth and influence all over the United States, and by 1880, John Rockefeller controlled 90% of the oil production and refining in the entirety of the United States. That was absolutely insane. In a few years, he was able to control all the oil wells and all the refineries. His oil monopoly made the whole industry feared John Rockefeller, to the point that the Congress members representing Ohio State, the state in which John Rockefeller worked, began filing monopolization cases against Rockefeller because he simply controlled the entire market and eliminated all his competition. When John felt that all the headache is coming from Ohio, he decided to move his business headquarters to New Jersey, and he established the Standard Oil Trust Company, which had shares in more than 40 companies. And in order to demonstrate the extent of his wealth, power, and influence, he built a giant headquarters in Broadway, New York. This wealth and power were backed by an estimated 2,000 oil wells, 6,400 kilometers, or 4,000 miles of oil pipelines, and more than 100,000 employees. But in 1890, the American federal government passed a law called Sherman Antitrust Act. This simply gave them the right to investigate companies that exercise monopolistic pressure to influence the market. But John's company was gigantic, with lots of files and backdoor deals, so big that the investigation took 21 years. The result was that John's companies exercised a huge monopoly pressure in order to control the oil market in America. The court's decision was to dismantle John's company into 34 smaller companies. This way other smaller companies can have room to compete. Although this decision may be shocking to most people, John retained big shares in all these companies, and he was still considered the owner of these companies. He was able to take advantage of the dismantling of his companies in order to achieve the largest percentage of profit. After a while, a number of his small companies started acquiring some of the 34 companies again. Simply put, John has 34 companies. He will make company number 1 buy company number 2, and company number 3 buys number 4, and so on until his companies became giants again. And even though John died in 1937, the Rockefeller name kept a huge chunk of oil production and trading, and by 2010, all John's companies became one of these 4 giant companies: Chevron, ExxonMobil, British Petroleum, and Marathon Petroleum. And today, the 4 companies have the upper hand in the American market. That made John the richest man in the world, with a fortune estimated at $400 billion. In today's money, and if you can't imagine how big this number is, Elon Musk, who was the richest man in the world before buying Twitter, had a peak wealth of an estimated $340 billion, and held this number for a short period of time. This means he was $60 billion short of John's wealth, who died almost 100 years ago. This was the story of John D. Rockefeller, the story that began with a child selling turkeys to markets and ended with the American oil tycoon and richest businessman who ever lived. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. If you liked it, consider subscribing to the channel. And feel free to suggest any topic you'd like us to cover in future videos down in the comment section. See you in the next video.